life keeps coming and taking people away, or at least your health diminishes. So I asked a simple question. I asked, was anyone else being born with you, holding your hand as you were coming out of your mother's womb? No. We came alone. And I asked, do you think someone will be holding your hand as you exit this life? Walking the path with you as you leave this body? And they said, no, Bhante. And I said, that is the truth. It is not sad. It is a fact. So many people become sad because of this. But being sad is a very passive affair. It's like you're flailing your arms, you don't know what to do, you become panicky. Although, and you get into some kind of a negative downward spiral. So many people get into drugs or bad company. Well, many people, countless people chose another path. They wanted to understand, is there a way out? That is what Lord Buddha presented, because he himself was the person who said, I have to do something about it. Now, over time, since he went forth, countless people went forth as well, became monks and nuns. Today's talk is about a group of nuns, in fact, Bhikkhunis, who had given up their lives as royalty. They were royalty. They were the wives of kings and princes, and they were princesses, or a queen in the case of Mahapajapati. They gave all that up because they saw that it's so fickle. A few years earlier, they were dancing and this and that, wearing their colorful, beautiful saris, musicians all over, food, endless food in the court, elephants, this, that, acrobats, all of the things that anyone would ever want. And then, people started disappearing. They died. King Suddhodana, Lord Buddha's father, died. He got old first. He wasn't as handsome, black-haired, this and that, powerful young man. He became old. His wife died. Lord Buddha's mother, when he was Siddhartha, Queen Maya, she died. But everything started crumbling. They were not made of a different material, these people. They were seeing the same kind of difficulties that we do see every day today. Their decision was different than ours. And that makes all the difference. We have had a retreat for 3 days here. It is only your commitment that can make you get up and come here. Sit through the whole day. Do the walking, do the sitting meditation. There will be always excuses. There will be always reasons. Life is always knocking. But it is a personal determination. So I don't care if you're wearing robes. I don't care if you have your head shaved. I don't care if you're a layperson. What is the position of your heart in response to life's changing circumstances? So here we have a group of human beings, monastics, specifically Bhikkhunis, that really want to make the most of their lives that they have still left. Queen Mahapajapati was getting old. So were the other nuns. So without further ado, I want to just jump right into the sutta and be exploring it together. This one comes from the Majjhima Nikaya. It is a recording. Yes, it is. Okay. So it is the Majjhima Nikaya, number 146. Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses, has 152 suttas. So they're all gems, they're all jewels. But I've noticed as you get to the end, remember, these were compiled by the first council, Arahants. And some of them were tweaked even later in later councils. But this is 146. And within the last 10 suttas, including this one, you have very powerful instructions being given. Almost as if the Arahants are trying to reach out to us and say, please listen, please practice, please really spend time on this teaching. These are not books like newspapers or something like that, like novels that we get to read. These are not weak storybooks that we read and try to be inspired by, or poems or poetry, things like that. Today, every person wants to write a book, especially on Buddhism or on meditation. Well, that's their choice, but we need not look upon the suttas in the same way we look upon these books. A book like, for example, Eckhart Tolle, things like that, or some other teacher, some other person, famous person. Sometimes I see people reading the suttas, yeah, but it didn't move me. No. Go back to the sutta, take it in, sit in meditation for a while, at least 5-10 minutes. Calm and tranquilize the mind, and then read the sutta. These are heavy, these are beautiful, these are, if you've ever taken, let's say, a paste of something, this is a banal example, but I'm trying to find an analogy. So imagine you have some type of a sauce, thick sauce. You can't eat that. It is made for you to put in a cup, dissolve with some water, and then pour it because it's too strong. Maybe it's too spicy, too oily, too dense. Your heart will diffuse it. Only your heart can. Otherwise, if you sit to analyze with your mind, try to do what commentators do. Well, this must be meaning this must be meaning that. No, there's no practice there. We go deep when we study the suttas. That's it. That's why Lord Buddha gave us these suttas, spent countless, selfless hours, years. And so did his students, his disciples. One of them we're going to meet in a minute. So this is Nandakovāda Sutta, the Venerable Nandaka's instruction. Majjhima Nikaya 146. I have personally heard this. At one time, the Blessed One was living at the monastery offered by Anathapindika within Jeta's Park in the city of Savatthi. Then the Venerable Teri, Mahapajapati. Teri is the female version of Tero or Tera. Mahapajapati Gautami approached the Blessed One with nearly 500 Bhikkhunis. After paying their respects by worshipping the Blessed One, they all stood to one side, and the Venerable Mahapajapati Gautami said to the Blessed One, Bhante, please advise the Bhikkhunis by giving them a talk on the Dhamma. Now, for those of you who don't know the Venerable Teri Mahapajapati, she is the grandmother, if you will, of all Bhikkhunis. It was because of her and her beseeching and asking and even begging Lord Buddha to ordain Bhikkhunis. And Lord Buddha instituted 8 special demands for her to agree to, and every other Bhikkhuni ever since to agree to first, completely, without any questions, that he finally said yes. Now, Queen Mahapajapati was also Lord Buddha's stepmother, his aunt. She's the one who raised him when Lord Buddha's, Siddhartha's mother died in 7 days after his birth. She took care of him. She raised him. In fact, that is what Venerable Ananda used to convince Lord Buddha, because several times she came. Remember, they walked all the way from Kapilavatthu to Vesali. It's a long distance, very long, several hours on a bus. They walked barefoot. And as if that was not going to be enough, they shaved their heads before they started their journey. Imagine, these are queens, princesses, royalty. You know, the top class of society in India. They decide to shave their heads, wear barefoot. These are not people who would walk around even in the palace on carpets barefoot. They had special things that they would wear so that they don't get hurt or they don't get sore feet. But they walked all that distance because they were determined. Today, when I ask a student to sit for an hour, to sit in a comfortable chair, they say, well, Bhante, can I just sit for 40 minutes, 45? Why an hour? Make it 20. Can I break it down into 5 20-minute intervals? You can do anything. The teacher is simply here to suggest and point the direction of what needs to be done. The commitment has to come from us. These were women who were 100% committed. That's why she didn't give up. She walked away in tears because Lord Buddha said, you're wasting your time. This is not going to happen. And then Venerable Ananda went back and said, Bhante, this is Mahapajapati Gautami. She raised you. And then that was not enough, because Lord Buddha said, Ananda, be careful. I know what you're doing. He said, yes, Bhante, but can you say that women cannot attain arahantship? And that was the thing. Because women, just like men, can attain arahantship. And that's what Lord Buddha said. He said, no, there is no obstacle for a woman to attain arahantship as such. Like she cannot attain arahantship. There's no such thing. She can. And he says, oh, okay then, Bhante. So if they can attain arahantship, why can't, they become Bhikkhunis? That's when Lord Buddha gave the special requisites, demands that need to be there. So that is Queen Mahapajapati. So even though after she promised, even very short while later, she goes and they become Bhikkhunis, already the problems start among themselves, among the women, among the Bhikkhunis, against Queen Mahapajapati, who struggled so much. They said, well, you should not have agreed to this, that. Because not everyone is an arahant. There's a lot of putujjanas among us. And that's the situation in the world. It's inescapable. But here, she is asking for a Dhamma discourse, because it's part of the Vinaya that was also instituted. A bhikkhu had to go and teach the Bhikkhunis. That was very important. A bhikkhu had to go. But later it was instituted that the bhikkhu has to have certain qualifications. Another set of requisites. The bhikkhu had to know the suttas, the bhikkhu had to know the Dhamma, basically, had to be perfect in Vinaya. He had to also be an arahant, among other things. Because he needed to go and advise them on the Dhamma and also answer any questions they might have, so that they can also gain exactly what the other monks get, the monastics. So that is the background briefly. So she's asking, Bhante, please come talk to the Bhikkhunis, give them a Dhamma talk. And the sutta continues. In those days, the bhikkhus were still taking turns to teach and instruct the bhikkhunis. So they would switch. So there was like a roster. Venerable Ananda would say, okay, Anuruddha went yesterday, today Mahamo. However, every time it was yes. So in those days, the bhikkhus were still taking turns to teach and instruct the bhikkhunis. However, every time it was the Venerable Nandaka's turn, he would avoid it by not going to advise to teach the bhikkhunis. He would, he would skip the scene, as they say. The Blessed One then addressed the Venerable Ananda. Ananda, whose turn is it to instruct and teach the bhikkhunis today? Bhante, it is the Venerable Nandaka's turn. But he does not like to instruct the bhikkhunis. Some of the bhikkhus were very strict on their vinaya because they were concerned, well, what if people talk? Well, what if I go too often and they say, he must have something to do with one or more of the bhikkhunis. Why is he going so many times? Even if he only went, let's say, on his usual time. People are people. People will talk. And plus, perhaps he didn't like to be with the opposite sex. But these are arahants. He was an arahant. So we don't know what were his reasons, but he just didn't go. Then the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Nandaka and said, instruct the Bhikkhunis, Nandaka. Please, Bhikkhu, teach the Bhikkhunis. O noble one, go and give the Bhikkhunis a talk on the Dhamma. And when Lord Buddha tells you, you go. Plus, look how beautifully he says it. He says, oh, noble one. He cannot speak to an arahant. Lord Buddha, you never see him like harshly, even if the arahant does something that is, let's say, by mistake, of course, something that is not in agreement with Lord Buddha's way of doing it, he would never call that person, oh, foolish man, which you see him say a lot of times. Hey, idiot. Something like that. But he never addresses an arahant like that. Look how he's not scolding. He's not saying, Nandaka, why aren't you going? He's sweetly asking him in a sense. Imagine, Lord Buddha is asking the arahant to go and teach. And then Venerable Nandaka says, yes, Bhante, said the Venerable Nandaka. In the following morning, he put on his robes and by taking his alms bowl and outer robe, went on his alms round in Savatthi. Afterwards, once he had already collected his alms, this is Venerable Nandaka, and the meal was over, he went to the monastery of the royal nuns. That's what the monastery was called. It was for the royal ladies, even though they're not royal now, but it was much better seen to be, it's much better for them to be together. The Bhikkhunis, meanwhile, on seeing the Venerable Nandaka approach, quickly prepared a seat for him and also water for washing his feet. Once at the monastery, the Venerable Nandaka sat on the prepared seat and washed his feet. The Bhikkhunis paid homage to the Venerable Nandaka and then went and sat to one side. Then the Venerable Nandaka said to those Bhikkhunis, sisters, this talk on the Dhamma shall be in the form of questions and answers. So already he's setting the rules. Where I will ask questions, and if you know or have the answer, you may go ahead and reply by saying, I understand. Or if you do not, then say, I do not understand. Very respectful. And if it so happens that you experience doubt or uncertainty about what is being taught, then you should go ahead and ask by saying, Bhante, what is the meaning of this? Why does it say so, Bhante? On hearing this direction, the Bhikkhunis expressed their delight by saying, Bhante, even hearing this invitation from Master Nandaka, we are already very pleased and happy. because he was looking at them with so much respect and appreciation. And the Venerable Nandaka continued by instructing the Bhikkhunis. Sisters, is the I permanent or impermanent? This is no nonsense question. He's just digging straight into the facts to get them to see dukkha. Do they see dukkha? Are these real practitioners, or what are they doing, wasting time in ropes? Quickly, is the I permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, this is him now asking, and that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So, with what is impermanence, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable, but that's what we do. I saw that dirty thing, and because of that, I feel bad. My eye hurt. When you're fixing your eye or something, I don't know, doing makeup or something, or, you know, oh, my eyes, my eye. He's asking, is the eye permanent? No. Is it a source of suffering? Yes. Sometimes you get eyelash or something caught in your eye. It's terrible. You need to almost need someone to actually come and get it out. You can't get it out. It's a source of pain. Sisters, is the ear permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. Because let's say you listen to beautiful music, or we were talking about the baby in the house, if you're parents. At one point or another, every parent will look upon that, or hearing the voice of the child, they will say, ah, how beautiful the sound of the baby when they're happy, not when they're crying, when they're happy. And then they grow up, that voice is gone. The ear hurts because it does not hear that voice. The music that you were enjoying, oh, yes, 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 and then, or the bird, suddenly it stops, and where did it go? Why did it stop? That's pain, isn't it? That's suffering. It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So, with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. So you guessed it, he's going to go through all the 6 senses. But it's important for us to listen, because oftentimes when translations are done of these important suttas, what the translators do is they put them all on the same line. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and then done, dot, dot, dot. That's it. You go ahead and read that, find that's disrespectful to the sutta. That's disrespectful to Lord Buddha. That's why I highly encourage us listening and reading them. That's why I had it done like this, completely. Sisters, is the nose permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Let's say you're sitting here and no nasty odor is coming to your nose, but somehow suddenly you get a whiff of a nasty smell. Let's say you're in a public area and you have to go to the restroom. It has always, it has happened to all of us. And you're walking in all the, the galleria, the whatever, the mall, you're walking and it's like nice smelling perfume, and you go to the restroom, poof, it hits you. Oh, I changed my mind. I don't want to use the bathroom. What happened? The nose is in pain. Most people don't think about the nose experiencing suffering. Yes, because it's delivering to you information, sensation that is causing you to feel disgust. That is dukkha. So the nose becomes a source of dukkha. That's what Venerable Nandaka is saying and explaining. Sisters, is the tongue permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. So here we have also the tongue. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you always order the same thing from that particular restaurant, that certain item. Or you like to buy certain fruit from the shops. And you expect, let's say if it's a mango or a dragon fruit or a durian, you expect the flavor to be the last time you really enjoyed it. And then you start eating and all of a sudden, the dragon fruit doesn't have sweetness to it. It's pale. The banana tastes funny. The mango is sour. It's not good. Or the dish that you ordered, the same dish at the same restaurant, somehow they have a different chef or cook. They're preparing the same dish, but wrong. Suffering. You see? Sisters, is the body permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me? This is happening to me. Or why is this happening to me? That's what we always use. And we always say that when it's something we don't like. When something good is happening to us, we don't say, oh, why is this happening to me? We never complain. It's only when dukkha is happening. Oh, why does this happen to me? Or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Sisters, is the mind permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante. It is not suitable. And they continued giving the response. And why do we say this? We say this because we have already seen this for ourselves to be truly the case through the development of correct wisdom, whereby we recognize how all of the 6 internal sense spheres are impermanent. 6 sense spheres. The internal ones are think of it in Buddhism, we call it the organs or salayatana. The spheres, the organs, the internal ones, meaning your eye. Now, many people confuse this with the actual anatomical eyes, the eyeball. That's not what we mean in the Dhamma when Lord Buddha says the eye. It is the whole function of the eye, the processing of the eye, as separate from the thing that the eye looks at or sees. That is the visible object, the visible form. That is the external sense. And then Venerable Nandaka says, sadhu, sadhu indeed, sisters, because he sees that these are not your common, people. These are actually, they have been doing their work. So this is good. So now you could see as a teacher, he goes deeper. And he's like, okay, we might have some arahants waiting here. to happen. Let's go. That is how a noble disciple truly sees, with the development of correct wisdom. And what do you think, sisters? Are visible forms permanent or impermanent? So now, that was the internal. Now he's talking about the actual visible form for the eye. That is its object. They are impermanent, Bhante. And those which are impermanent, are they considered to be suffering or happiness? They are considered to be suffering, Bhante. So he goes through the whole drill of if what is impermanent and suffering and unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to call that me, mine? This is belonging to me. Why is this happening to me? They say, no, Bhante, it is not suitable. Are audible sounds permanent or impermanent? The sounds that you hear, they are impermanent, Bhante. And those which are impermanent, are they considered to be suffering or happiness? They are considered to be suffering, Bhante. Look at anything you experience, anyone that gives you joy, anything that gives you joy in your life. Look at it carefully next time. Ask yourself the same question as Venerable Nandaka is asking. Is this permanent? The answer should be obvious, but you need to answer that. So if it is not permanent, could it be suffering or happiness? That's, again, you have to answer that question. See if you could bring that into your life as often as you can. In your daily life, especially if you're having pleasant and painful experiences. If you taste something that's very delicious, or you're tired and exhausted, and finally you put your head on the pillow, you say, oh, this is perfect. Is this permanent or impermanent? You try some clothes and they just perfectly fit you, and like, I didn't have to look around the stores. This was perfect. Oh, look at this. This is perfect. This is perfect. Is this permanent or impermanent? Play this game with you. And soon enough, you will not be grabbed by Mara. You will break free from Mara. So he says, how can this then be mine? So I'm just going to, I highly recommend you read the sutta. I translated this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I think. And it's now completely put on the website. So please read it, do a PDF, are you okay? Okay, drink something. Is that permanent or impermanent? While drinking, drink it first. Good. So the PDFs of this sutta and other suttas that I've covered over time in discourses like this are there. So please, the reason why I'm saying this, read it in full, because I'm going to be forced. Otherwise, this is a long sutta, because there's so much repetition. And I know the mind likes to fall asleep with repetitions. And these last 10 suttas or so in the Majjhima Nikaya, they are designed as a drill, mental drill. Like if you want to build something, you need to drill it in again and again and again. Like when you learned your alphabet, ABCs, it was the teacher saying, A, B, you have to repeat again. That's how it's sunk. We need to go over these suttas to really drill it into the mind and understanding. And that's what Venerable Nandaka is doing with these Bhikkhunis. Let's not forget that. This is a system that works. And because of our culture being so lazy, even the translators are lazy. They're not writing it, and it only takes copy and paste. I mean, come on. But we need to read these. That's my encouragement to you. No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Are smells permanent or impermanent? That nasty smell that you walked into the bathroom and you smell, ooh, is that permanent? But the mind makes it look like it is permanent, as if this is going to be stuck in your nose forever. Well, no. I walked into the restroom, it was smelly. When I leave the restroom, the smell will be left behind me. So it is impermanent. So the suffering I experienced also is impermanent. But the mind likes to hold things and make this like, this is it, forever and ever and ever. There's no forever in the Dhamma, anyhow. So are smells permanent or impermanent? They are impermanent, Bhante. And those which are impermanent, are they considered to be suffering or happiness? They are considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and unreliable in its changing nature, is this suitable to be called mind? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Are flavors or tastes permanent or impermanent? Taste, that nasty tasting food, or you taste something and it's lovely looking and you bite into it and then it's not, it's rotten, it's spoiled, and it messes you up. You throw it out of your, you get rid of it. It's like, I have to wash my mouth. So you're now experiencing dukkha, suffering. But is that permanent? No, Bhante. And those which are impermanent, are they considered to be suffering or happiness? They are considered to be suffering, Bhante. So what is permanent, impermanent suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable to be called, this is mine, this is happening to me? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Are tactile objects or surfaces permanent or impermanent? They are impermanent. If you've ever cut your nail too much, like too deep, and then you touch something, ugh. When I was a child, when I was 9, my father put me to work basically during the summer, and I went into a silversmith factory. So we used to make coins, and they used to print huge. There was a die cast. It's like a mold. So they would cut these round, perfectly bright pieces of silver plate, which was going to turn into a coin. And we would stamp Virgin Mary face on top. And guess who was sitting in front of that press? A 6-ton press. 9-year-old. It was this green, I still remember, green, I don't know if it was 6 tons or 10 tons or 60, I don't know how much it needs to get the mold into the metal. But anyhow, it was above my head. I would place it like this I would touch it and I would feel, okay, it went in, and I would pull my head away and hit the button, and this thing would come on, and it would stamp the figure on top, and then it would go away. Then I would scoop it up and get that and then put it in a bucket. Now, the problem was I was very sensitive to anything that has sandpaper. And then I had to take hundreds and hundreds of coins because the edges are now too sharp in the bottom of that coin. So I had to file it. Well, that is where the sandpaper comes in. So I would hold it and sandpaper that. And my skin would get irritated. I would have rashes. So it was very much dukkha. That was a tactile perception, object. I was feeling it in my body. It was painful. Fortunately, it only lasted 3 months. But they used to pay me $30 for that, which I would give to my mom. So that was the end of it. So anyhow, are those things impermanent or permanent? They are impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is suffering, Bhante. So the whole drill, this is not you, this is not happening to you, so it would not be suitable. Are mental phenomena or thoughts permanent or impermanent? They are impermanent, Bhante, if you've been meditating at all. especially meditators, you would know how it is impossible for the mental state to stay the same. Thoughts come and go. Sometimes you hit that nice spot. It's like, oh, this is nice. Tranquility. Oh, yes, this is no sounds, no thoughts coming in. You're like, yes, I'm an arahant. And poof, it's gone. And you're worried about the kitchen or this, the food, the laundry, the foot hurting, the knee hurting. And it's like, poof, changed. This is happening all the time. They are impermanent, Bhante. And those which are impermanent, are they considered to be suffering or happiness? They are considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. And why do we say this? This is the Bhikkhunis saying. We say this because we have already seen this for ourselves to be truly the case. Through the development of correct wisdom. There is correct wisdom and wrong wisdom. Wisdom that is applicable, wisdom that is yours, is the correct wisdom. So many people parrot, like parrots, you know. They take somebody else's words and they say, well, Confucius said this. Well, the Buddha said this. Well, this is perfect. They have no idea what they're talking about. This is not their truth. When you have experimented, tried it, tested it, then you know for a fact this to be the truth. That is correct wisdom. And that no school teaches you. No book can teach you. Wisdom can never be taught. I read once. It can only be caught. Caught, like character. You must pick it up. You must understand it through experiencing it. That's why no Harvard will ever make somebody wise. Everybody goes crazy about Harvard. Oh, yes. Yale. Oh, yes. Some of the stupidest people on the planet come from Harvard and Yale. Though some of the most heartless people come from Yale and other places like that. Stanford, that people around the world pay top dollar to send their kids. The university is not going to make the person wise. What they use from whatever they picked up from their parents, this, that, and applying it, that, in their own lives, that's going to make the person wise. And the best way to become wise is through meditation. That's what we've been trying to say. Lord Buddha has been trying to say it for 2,600 years. That's why the Bhikkhunis left their lives, not because they were desperate. They chose to leave that life. They could have died in comfort without feeling a single blister in their feet. They were all bloodied, you know, I didn't say that yet. When they got to Vesali, they were bleeding from their feet, from walking. Their feet were not used to walking barefoot outside in their yard even. And if you ever walked, I mean, even walking outside on the grass, you will find some sharp objects. You have to be careful. They walked hundreds of miles. So that determination is what is necessary today. No one's going to make you an arahant. Your determination has a lot to do with it, though. Your commitment has everything to do with it. And so they say, through a correct wisdom, whereby we recognize how all of the 6 external sense spheres are impermanent. Sadhu, sadhu, indeed, sisters, Venerable Nandaka replies. That is how a noble disciple truly sees with the development of correct wisdom. And what do you think, sisters? Is I consciousness permanent or impermanent? Now, when you have the I, you have the visible object. What happens as a result is I consciousness. This is how we understand, this is how we look at the phenomenon of sight. Not just sight, we're going to see the whole 6 senses. But when we study, let's say, Paticca Samuppada, this is crucial for us to understand. So If you had a piece of stick, let's say a piece of string, one end is the eye, the other end is the visible object. What is in between is the consciousness. Consciousness is only there because you have one of the other. It's not a third separate thing. It is simply the result of these two coming together. Many people look at consciousness as a separate thing. That's the eye, like the eyeball, or like the object, visible object. No. This is where many people get Paticca wrong. They even write books on it. Wrong. So we need to understand the meeting of the two is eye consciousness. Now, is eye consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante, because it changes. It changes all the time, just like the eye changes. The object changes. So what if these are changing, the eye consciousness too will be changing. And that which is impermanent is considered to be suffering or happiness. You guessed it, suffering, Bhante. And then it's it's unsuitable for it to be called this is myself. Is ear consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. Again, the ear, the sound, and you have sound consciousness. Now, some of you might wonder about, like, how could the ear consciousness or eye consciousness not be permanent? If you only have one consciousness, well, let me ask it this way. Do you have only one consciousness? No. How do you know? Because other things are happening. There's other things you're picking up. At one point, you have the ear consciousness working, loud and clear. Suddenly, your eyes catch something. Boom! Eye consciousness comes to the forefront. Now you drop the ear consciousness. Now you're going with the eye. You're seeing. Your attention went where? A different consciousness. What happened to the ear? We liked the ear consciousness. What? We were buddies. What happened? Oh, gone at that moment. So do you see when people say monkey mind? It's the same thing. Consciousnesses are coming and going constantly, unimaginably fast. That's why when I ask you to do walking meditation, you say, Bhante, it's too difficult. Because why? Well, because I have to think about so many things. Well, no, you have to keep track of many things. Because your eyes are seeing something, boop, your attention goes there, and you're looking at it, and suddenly you remember your grandmother or something. What is that? That is mental consciousness or mind consciousness. As you're doing that, you're hearing the birds, poof, your ear consciousness kicks into gear. You see how many, this is happening so fast that we start to think that, oh, I have a consciousness and that is called me, because it's happening so fast. Movies, if you look at movies, a movie typically goes, it's a strip of film. Every second, you have at least 24 frames running in front of your eyes, fast. Every second, 24 frames. Now your eyes look at these frames and sees a movie. It doesn't see a still image, unmoving image. It sees movement. Now you see the tree or the bird flying. Well, there's no bird flying. It's just a bird in this position, then in this position, then in this. It's the same thing. So you take all those consciousnesses and put together, you have a moment of your life that you call, this is me, this is mine, this is happening to me, this is my consciousness. And then you stretch it out and you look at a person's life. It's a series of countless consciousnesses coming up and going, coming up and going, coming up and going. How can I name that consciousness? But we do name it. You name it Bhante, you name it this, you name it that, so that to make it easy. Complicated, it seems. but it needs to be processed. You need to absorb this slowly, not to take it just intellectual stuff. That's why I asked for you, well, of you, to look at the next things that happen in your life. Ask, is this permanent or impermanent? Is the thing that I'm looking at permanent or impermanent? And as a result of these two coming together, there is I consciousness. Now, the I consciousness, is it permanent or impermanent? You continue this line of questioning, and I guarantee you, you're going to become an arahant. I'm not just saying that. I guarantee you, you're going to become an arahant. How fast? It's up to you. This is very important. Many people today, even Dhamma teachers, talk as if arahantship is something that's left in fairy tales. It really doesn't exist anymore in this life. Forget it. They don't say it out loud, but that's what they're hinting at. Do dana, this and that. That's do chanting. Yeah, you're good. That's not what a Buddhist is. That's not what the Dhamma is. So take these tools, apply them, ask, is this permanent or not? Not. Is this causing suffering then? If something is impermanent, yeah. Especially if it's something good. If it's impermanent, I lost that goodness. And what do I have? The opposite. That's dukkha. But is dukkha also permanent? No. Oh, this is interesting. So you're now probing into the very fabric of reality. Okay? So you see, it's very personal. It has everything to do with your effort. Nibbana doesn't come to you. You have to apply yourself, work. You have all received education. You all have earned living. You have all tasted some things in life that didn't come just like that. You had to go work for it. You still do. But when it comes to the Dhamma, we expect it to come to us. No, it's impossible. The same rule applies. So, ear consciousness, is it permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. Is nose conscious? So I'm jumping now to make, because I'm not even halfway, so I'm trying to speed things up. Is nose consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. Now, please do yourselves a favor. When I am repeating this, when I'm not repeating myself, but when I'm reading this, what Venerable Nandaka has said, the brain, if it hears the same thing, basically the same structure or formula, suddenly it goes into numb mode. It gets bored. So it checks out. What we call tinamida, sloth and torpor kicks in. So please be aware of that. Okay? So because this is a drill. That's one of the reasons why it's very important for reading, or at least in this case, the reason why I like to read this to listeners is it can take you very deep, just listening to it. If you're meditating, it can really take you deep. But just be cautious of it. That's what I want to say. The mind can get bored and it will start thinking about other stuff. Is nose consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering. So, with what is impermanent, suffering, and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it and claim it to be, this is part of me, this is happening to me, this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Is tongue consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent suffering and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it to be, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Is body consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent suffering and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. Is mind consciousness permanent or impermanent? It is impermanent, Bhante. And that which is impermanent, is it considered to be suffering or happiness? It is considered to be suffering, Bhante. So with what is impermanent suffering and thus unreliable in its changing nature, is it suitable for you to look upon it or claim it as, this is part of me, this is happening to me, or this is myself? No, Bhante, it is not suitable. And why do we say this? We say this because we have already seen this for ourselves to be truly the case. Through the development of correct wisdom, whereby we recognize how all of the 6 internal sense spheres and the external sense spheres and consciousnesses are all impermanent. Sadhu, sadhu, indeed, sisters. This is how a noble disciple truly sees with the development of correct wisdom. This is when the person is now beginning to have right view. Sammaditthi. We don't call a person who comes to the Dhamma or practices the rites and rituals as a person who has right view. That's not necessarily right view. We need deeper understanding of reality. When a person is able to see all of these phenomena as impermanent, already you're on the right track. One can say this person has right view. Now, when you go deeper and start understanding the different layers of reality as you experience it, oh, this is the source of my suffering. Already you're getting close. When this becomes stronger and stronger, then you attain Sotapatti. You're unshakable. That is a person who has right view. In reality, only a Sotapanna can be said to have right view. Sotapanna and up. Because everyone else below can change. They're still Putujanas. They could still change. Hey, let's go to this other temple over there, this Hindu temple, this Christian temple, or there's this new Buddhist thing going on over there. A Sotapanna will never go because they are set. Their correct view is unshakable. That is a true practitioner. That is a true Buddhist, if you ask me. Because they don't go through rites and rituals. And no, you don't have to be a monastic to become a Sotapanna, okay? There are many, many, many shaved heads, robe-wearing bhikkhus who are putujanas. Uninstructed, uneducated, ordinary worldling, unfortunately. But it requires commitment from all of us. Sisters, in just the same way that a burning oil has its oil as fuel for the flame, which is impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. Similarly, the wick, that string, the thread that's coming out from the oil lamp, the wick is impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. The flame that burns is impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. The light that emanates from all these things coming together is also impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. If you were to look at the candle or the oil and then the wick, you can think of the oil as the eye, the wick as the visible form. You light it up and now you have light. Think of it as consciousness, the eye consciousness. All of these things are impermanent. Is this beginning to make sense? It needs some digesting, some processing, some work that you need to do in your own personal lab of life. Now, suppose, sisters, someone were to say that despite the fact that the burning oil lamp has its oil that is impermanent and an unreliable thing, also its wick that is impermanent and truly an unreliable thing, as well as its flame that burns, which is impermanent and truly an unreliable thing. The light emanating from all these things coming together, however, is in fact permanent, eternal, and truly a reliable and an unchanging thing. Now, would such a person be speaking correctly? So if the oil is impermanent, the wick is impermanent, the light is impermanent, right? And then, the oil is impermanent, the wick is impermanent, the flame is impermanent, but the light that comes from it is permanent. Does it make sense? They're all impermanent. So if the causes are all impermanent, then the outcome is also going to be impermanent. No, Bhante, such a person would not in fact be speaking correctly. And why do we say that? It is because, Bhante, a burning oil lamp has its oil as fuel for the flame, which is impermanent. Truly an unreliable thing. Similarly, the wick is impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. The flame that burns is also impermanent, truly an unreliable thing. So is the light emanating from all these things coming together also is impermanent and therefore a truly unreliable thing. In just the same way, sisters, if someone were to say, although my 6 internal sense spheres are impermanent, whatever pleasant, painful, or neutral feelings I experience because of having these 6 internal spheres, however, are all permanent, eternal, and therefore truly reliable things. So if I have these sense spheres, the eye, the nose, the ear, etc., but whatever I experience because of the eye, the feelings, good, bad, ugly, or neutral, those must be permanent. No. This pretty much explains our life. We take things permanently. That's why you have friends. You call them by names. You really think of them as solid. The relationships, you think of them as real, unchanging. This person hurt me. This enemy hurt me. This boss loves me. Da 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 da. This is me. This is who I am. All that starts crumbling if you follow this. Now, would such a person be speaking correctly? No, Bhante, such a person would not be speaking correctly. And why do we say that? It is because, Bhante, with the arising of specific conditions, there arise their specific kinds of feelings. Each of these senses will produce, based on the conditions, specific feelings. And with the ending of those specific conditions, there end the specific kinds of feelings as a result. So if the fuel is finished, done. There's no light, there's no flame, there's no light, there's no warmth. Sadhu, sadhu, sisters. That is how a noble disciple truly sees with the development of correct wisdom. Further, sisters, imagine there is a huge tree full of heartwood. Heartwood is the deepest part, the most solid, with roots that are impermanent, changing and seen truly as perishable things. The trunk also being impermanent, changing, and a perishable thing. Similarly, its branches and foliage too, being impermanent, changing, and perishable things, as well as its shadow of the tree also is impermanent, changing, and a perishable thing. Now, suppose, sisters, someone were to come and say that even though the tree's roots are impermanent, changing, and seen truly as changing things, the trunk also being impermanent, the branches and foliage too being impermanent, but somehow its shadow, they claim, is in fact permanent, unchanging, and not a perishing thing. Now, would such a person be speaking correctly? If the tree, the trunk, the foliage, the fruits, everything, the branches are all impermanent, then the shadow also is impermanent. No, Bhante, such a person would not be speaking correctly. And why do we say that? It is because, Bhante, so they repeat what he said. So I'll save us some time from the repetition. In just the same manner, sisters, if someone were to say, although my 6 external, so now he's talking about the objects, external sense spheres are impermanent, whatever pleasant, painful, or neutral feelings I experience because of having these 6 external spheres, however, are all permanent, eternal, and therefore truly reliable things. Like the example I gave of the nose and the dirty smell in the bathroom. The nose, is it permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent. Okay, so whatever is impermanent causes suffering. Now, the object too, the smell, is it permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. Now, even though these two are impermanent, I walk away thinking, oh, the nasty smell I smelled is permanent. Does it make sense? If these things are impermanent, the smell too is impermanent. As I walk away, it will change its nature. It will become less and it will disappear. I don't smell it now. I used to smell it, but now I don't. So that too is impermanent. The feeling that I get, the nasty feeling, the painful feeling I get also is impermanent. No, Bhante, such a person would not be speaking correctly. And why do we say that? It is because, Bhante, with the arising of specific conditions, that specific condition is key. Based on specific conditions, you experience joy, happiness, comfort, safety, based on specific conditions. It's okay, let it out. Good? Okay. Impermanent, I love it. Impermanent, that's it. So all these things are changing based on specific conditions. You are not going to be choking, let's say, if you didn't have a body, if you didn't have a throat, if you didn't have dryness in your throat, and maybe the water also. All these are unique, specific conditions. You know, the Earth is about 93 million miles away from the sun. I think that's what I remember. I used to teach that, you know. Yeah. Now, if you go further, just a little bit, half a mile, 2 miles, maybe 10 miles or more, you will feel the cold of space. But if you get closer to the sun, you will feel heat. That's what happens in the summer. The Earth is tilted, right? So as it's moving, rotating on itself, and it has its revolution around the sun, so it gets, at one point, it gets closer to the sun. The northern hemisphere is tilted at one point in one direction, and in another direction in a different part of the year. Because of that, we have the different seasons. Specific conditions. Now, if somehow somebody pushes the Earth closer to the sun, we would become like Mercury, dry up, or like Venus or something from the heat. So specific conditions, there arise specific kinds of feelings. And with the ending of those specific conditions, there end the specific kinds of feelings as a result. So even feelings are impermanent, based on specific conditions. That is how a noble disciple truly sees with the development of correct wisdom. Now, sisters, suppose a skilled butcher or his apprentice would slaughter a cow with a sharp carving knife, but without damaging the internal fleshy parts or its external skin. So they go in somehow without cutting the inside fleshy parts, the internal organs itself. He would then chop and sever all its internal connective tissues, the ligaments, the things that hold the joints together. by cutting them into small bits. And after skinning and peeling off the cow's entire hide, entire skin, they put the cow back together by placing all the cut up joints and tissues back inside its outer skin to make it look like it was before. And then would say, here we have the same cow, intact, just like it was before, complete and in that same skin. Now, would such a person be speaking correctly? The cow is cut up, it's dead, even though it might not look like it is, but they cut it up from inside, tore it into pieces. How is that the same cow? No, Bhante, such a person would not be speaking correctly. And why do we say that? It is because, Bhante, that skilled butcher or his apprentice would be slaughtering the cow with that sharp carving knife, or chopping severing all its internal connective tissues, cutting them into small bits, and after skinning and putting it back together, here is what we have, the same cow. However, that would still not change the fact that the cow has been removed from its skin and its internal connective tissues are now cut into pieces, Bhante. Sisters, the purpose in presenting you with this simile is to explain something. And here is its meaning. The internal flesh of the animal, of the image, is a synonym for the 6 internal sense spheres. The eye, the ear, the tongue, the nose, the body, the mind. Those are the internal. Whereas the external skin of the cow is a synonym for the 6 external sense spheres. Sense objects, the visible object, the sound, the flavors, the smell, the tactile objects, thoughts. Now, the internal connective tissues, joints, and ligaments is a synonym for yearning and lust. Yearning and lust. I want to see that thing again. Ooh, what was that? Let me look at it again. That video I liked. Let me look at it again. Yearning, longing, lusting. Oh, I want to taste that thing again. Oh, I really like that food. Oh, let's go to that same restaurant and have that. What is that? Yearning and lusting. The sharp carving knife is a synonym for the noble one's wisdom, because it is with that noble wisdom that the internal impurities, fetters, and shackles that bind the person are chopped, severed, and cut again and again. What I was describing to you earlier, encouraging you to do. Next time you're having an experience, ask yourself, is this permanent or impermanent? When you're thinking of something, the thought that keeps coming back again and again and again and again, is this permanent or impermanent? Ask. What you're doing is you're using the Lord Buddha's sharp knife of wisdom to tear up the movie that I said, the strip of film. You're cutting it back into its still images. It's unique one-by-one frames. You're not buying that story. You're no longer fooling yourself by thinking, oh, no, this is a whole series of one consciousness is happening. No. Series of consciousnesses happening all the time. Millions and millions of them in a second. So fast. Sisters, there are these 7 factors of awakening, which when the Bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates, he is then able to completely destroy the mental contaminants, the kilesas, the defilements, as a result of which he finally experiences the freedom of the heart, attaining freedom through wisdom, all in this very body. And having realized it by his own direct and higher intuitive understanding, he continues experiencing liberation throughout his whole life. Continues experiencing it. It's not a one-time thing that the Bhikkhu or an Arahant goes back and says, yes, do you remember 1974? Yes, when we had that Arahantship experience, Nibbana. Yes, that was a lovely experience. No, they're experiencing it continuously. because that is a permanent state. Now what, sisters, are these 7? The Satta Bojjhangas. Here, sisters, the Bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the mindfulness awakening factor, Sati Bojjhanga, as he becomes more and more settled in seclusion, becoming more dispassionate, while the causes for agitation start to die and cease in him, all of which lead him to continuously relinquish by giving up, constantly giving up. A person who is experiencing the Satta Bojjhangas, by nature, by naturally, they start to not want to have as much things happen to them. The old habits of, yeah, let's go that and do that, and then you go and it's like, but I don't have that same desire. That is what we call viraga, dispassion, because you are getting closer to the stream. And sotapanna, what is a sotapanna? The person who jumped into the stream, guaranteed. But you're getting closer now. You're smelling the fresh water. Similarly, the Bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the examination awakening factor, Dhamma Vichaya, as he becomes more and more settled in seclusion, becoming more dispassionate, while the causes for agitation start to die and cease in him. Things that used to agitate you, irritate you, don't as much. Because of that, you want to go back into seclusion. You're like, you don't want to go to that club. You don't want to be surrounded by so many people. You don't want to, not as much, like, okay, fine, we'll do it. Like, you don't want to be going to parties as much. People invite you to these places, that place. It's like, yeah, but okay, fine, I'll do it as a favor. But then eventually, like, gets less and less and less because you're finding happiness elsewhere. All of which lead him to continuously relinquish by giving up. Similarly, the Bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the persevering effort awakening factor, Virya Bojjhanga, as he becomes more and more settled in seclusion, becoming more dispassionate, while the causes for agitation start to die and cease in him. All of which lead him to continuously relinquish by giving up. And when I say the person will no longer want to go as much, as often to parties and things, because by being in those places, he will be given the specific conditions and causes for him to get agitated. And it's going to be like as if you cleaned up the room, the house, suddenly you go outside into the mud, garden, whatever, and you come back and you step on the ground and the carpeting, it was nice and clean, and now you say, oh, what is this? What is, why did I go outside? Why did I? So next time I'll do less. So that is how you treat your mind at that, because you're cleaning up, you're protecting. This is your safety. This is beautiful. This is all your work. You don't want to mess it up by going to this club and that bar or that friends over there who keep gossiping about others. Like, no, I like you, but I don't like you that much to create havoc and destruction in my world, in my mind. I have to live with myself when I go home. I'm sorry. Let's not talk about that, please. Yeah, but I like to gossip. I said, sorry then. I'm going to see you less. I like you, but I don't like you that much. See? Because now your priorities are getting clearer for you. When somebody says something nasty about someone else, you're like, is this true? Is this helping me now? Is this helping the person? Is there metta? No, no, no. Then why are we talking about this? You're messing it up for me. So that was the Virya. Similarly, the Bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the spiritual joy awakening factor. This is spiritual joy, piti, which is different kind of joy, totally. This is the most powerful kind of joy one can experience. And when you're practicing, this, by the way, this one comes on its own. You don't say, okay, Okay, Joy, let's come up. Joy, come on, where are you? No, it comes up when you are giving it its specific conditions. Remember? When the specific conditions are there, when you have sila. Sila is important. When you're meditating, when you're asking these questions and you're giving yourself the time to sit every day, and you're not afraid to go deeper, a little bit longer, 1 minute more. It's okay, 5 minutes more. What is the 5 minutes between us? Let's do 10 minutes, okay. And then you start enjoying it, and then one day you're sitting there watching something, and all of a sudden in your heart there's going to be bursting joy. So much that you don't know what to do with it, and you're going to feel guilty that you're feeling this much joy. This is unprecedented. When it first happened to me, I remember I was watching something, and I was just looking at it. It was a commercial. I wasn't even watching. I was looking at it. And suddenly I felt this thing happen in my heart. My body started trembling, and my heart felt like it's going to come out of my mouth. Basically, that's how much like exhilaration, my chest, my heart is beating. And I'm like, whoa, what did I do? What did I by accident take something, or did I eat too much spice, pepper? What happened? No to all those things. And then I felt guilty that this is wrong. I should not be this joyful. So my cognitive brain started working like, okay, let's find out the cause for this. Completely missing the joy. Completely making it like not important. I have to find excuses for it, as if. And then the chitta, the heart said, okay, relax and just shut up. Just be in it. Just be, just let it. Did you ask for this? No, I didn't know it was coming. Poof, it came. And it lasted. And then I found out how to get rid of Tinhamida, sloth and torpor. When you're sitting to meditate, invite that joy. Say, I'm making room for the joy. And if you've experienced it once, guess what happens? Your heart remembers it. Poof, it comes up. And then you can sit for at least 1 more hour with a back like this, your spine like this. These are facts. I've done them, I've seen them, and I've taught students, and they've been like, Bhante, that was amazing. The joy, that's how powerful it is. It lifts you up. There's no way you're going to fall asleep. No way with piti. And sometimes it would happen where you want to fall asleep. You're exhausted, especially like on a retreat, let's say 10-day or 20-day or whatever. You're on a retreat and you're exhausted. You've been meditating 16, 20 hours that day. Your eyes are closing, but then the joy comes. Good luck sleeping with the joy in your heart. I said, okay. So one time I just got up and I said, okay, I'm going to go walking. And with the joy, the beauty of the Bojjhanga joy, it brings right behind it Passaddhi, which is the next one. It's so tranquil, unprecedented tranquility in the mind. Suddenly it's like, ooh, everything stopped as if. This is natural. This is not unique. This is not something that only happens to certain people. That's why Lord Buddha taught the Dhamma. He didn't teach it to only few people. This is for everyone. Whoever has the willingness to really put the effort and energy and trust in this. Similarly, the bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the tranquility of mind awakening factor, Passaddhi. This is what I was mentioning. As he becomes more and more settled in seclusion, becoming more dispassionate, while the cause for agitation start to die and cease in him, all of which lead him to continuously relinquish by giving up. Similarly, the bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the collectedness of mind awakening factor. That is samadhi. I don't use the translation of concentration because it's incorrect to describe, especially as a bojjhanga. When you have joy, this kind of joy, immediately after you will have tranquility. Depending on how deep the joy of a mark it left on you, that tranquility will last. Sometimes it will last a long time. And then that's creating room for samadhi. Now the mind is ready to be really collected. Then it just goes down even deeper. This is where the Dhamma comes together in the heart of the person, meaning you start to understand things. You start to have panya here, and especially right after what's coming next. And sisters, the bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates the equanimity awakening factor, upekkha, as he becomes more and more settled in seclusion, becoming more dispassionate, while the causes for agitation start to die and cease in him, all of which lead him to continuously relinquish by giving up. You're even giving up the joy, by the way. One of the quickest way to make sure that the joy slips from you is if you try to hold it. I see sometimes meditators wanting to hold it. Bhante, why did it go? Well, remember impermanence? Did you know it was coming? No? Okay, it came and it went. So allow it. Don't be yearning and lusting after it, because it easily people can get caught in that. You can lust after someone, or you can lust after some Dhamma experience. They're both lust. Be careful. He is then able to completely destroy. In this manner, sisters, when the bhikkhu constantly develops and cultivates these 7 factors of awakening, he is then able to completely destroy the mental contaminants, the kilesas, the defilements in the heart. As a result of which, he finally experiences the freedom of the heart. Akuppachetu vimutti, attaining freedom through wisdom, all in this very body, in this very birth. This is important. Dittheva Dhamme, in this very birth, Lord Buddha says. Anyone who teaches you the Dhamma, anywhere you read or you hear or whatever, if they are not stressing the importance of attaining the fruit of Nibbana in this life and pushing it to another life, run. They don't deserve to be called Dhamma teacher. Okay? This is your life. Don't waste it. This is not my words, by the way. These are the words that Lord Buddha gave. Don't waste your precious life. In this very birth, make this birth the last birth for you. I was mentioning yesterday, I think it was, or the day before. Those who follow the teachings of Lord Buddha are not afraid of death. We are afraid of birth, to be reborn again. That is worse than death for us. Others hearing us, from different traditions, are like, what? Yes. If you have birth, you have the whole enchilada, as they say. The whole thing that comes after. Every worst, every bad thing you can imagine. Old age, sickness, death, losing loved ones, this, that. Knees don't work, amnesia, dementia, Alzheimer's. All these things come because of not death, but birth. That's what Lord Buddha is teaching here. Don't waste this precious birth that you have. This one. Don't look for another one. Thus, having instructed the nuns, the Venerable Nandaka sent them away by saying, and now, sisters, you may go, for it is late. Because for nuns, they had to go to their kutis, I guess, and he had to go back. Yes, Bhante, the Bhikkhunis replied, as they paid homage to the Venerable Nandaka and circumambulated him in respect while keeping him to the right. Then they went and approached. They're so excited, they don't go to their kutis. They go to Lord Buddha, because it was a tradition that if you hear a bhikkhu give you instructions or answers to questions, and you're there in the inner circle of Lord Buddha, you're close by, what many people would do is they would go to Lord Buddha to kind of check. Bhante, Venerable Ananda said this. We were having this discussion. I asked him this, and he answered this. And then they would hear what Lord Buddha's take would be on that. So now they're so excited because Venerable Nandaka went there. They know he's an arahant. He gave them such a valuable teaching. So they want to go and say, Bhante, you sent us Nandaka, Bhante, and this is what happened. Bhikkhunis, so they reported to Lord Buddha what had happened. And then Lord Buddha this time addressed them by saying, Bhikkhunis, you may now go, for it is late. So they report to him, and he says, you may go now back to your monastery. Yes, Lord, the Bhikkhunis replied as they paid homage to the Blessed One and circumambulated him while keeping him to their right, and then left. When the Bhikkhunis had gone back to their quarters, the Blessed One addressed the Bhikkhus and said, Bhikkhus, on seeing the moon waxing during the 14th day of the month, when it's building, you cannot find those who would doubt that it is incomplete, because it's obvious. If you have eyes, you'll see that it is incomplete. For it is not full moon yet. In the same manner, bhikkhus, although those bhikkhunis are very moved and delighted in hearing the Dhamma from Nandaka, nevertheless, their main purpose has not yet been fulfilled. They are not arahants yet, because that was their goal. That was their goal. They had put on the robes, they had gone forth to become arahants. And Lord Buddha says, not yet. Then the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Nandaka again by saying, therefore, Nandaka, go ahead and instruct those bhikkhunis yet again on that same topic. Yes, Bhante, said the Venerable Nandaka, and in the following morning, he put on his robes, and by taking his alms bowl and outer robe, he went on his alms round in Savatthi, and afterwards, once he had already collected his alms and the meal was over, he went to the monastery of the royal nuns. And as before, he began instructing the bhikkhunis by saying, so I won't say it because our time, it's been over an hour and a half. So basically, the same, verbatim, the same instruction Lord Buddha tells him to give to the bhikkhunis. Because they're so close. They're so close. And plus, sometimes I tell meditators, students, and they're pushing so much, and they're really good working, hardworking students. They really have a big heart. They really want to experience the Dhamma. I say, go and rest. It's time for them to go and rest because they're too sharp. They're too agitated. The mind needs to rest a little. And then they come out the next day so refreshed, and now the sit is even more beautiful. They go even deeper. The insights are much more meaningful and deeper. It's life-changing. So Lord Buddha knew all these things that were at play. That's why he told Nandaka, Nandaka, go and teach the bhikkhunis the same thing. And the sutta goes, repeats everything I said, but I won't repeat it. But please, I encourage you, if you really want to go into the practice, you can even hear it, because I have a different version of it I have recorded years ago, the Majjhima Nikaya, this one, where I'm not commenting as I am. It's just a sutta. It's a different version than this because this is a recent translation I did. So you can play that while you're sitting in meditation. I have the whole Majjhima Nikaya like that. You can put play and you can listen to them. So, so he goes through the 6 senses, external, internal, consciousness, etc. And I'm getting to the end portion where the same thing happens in a sense. After the Bojjhangas, he explained to them the Bojjhangas. And now, sisters, you may go, for it is late, he says. Yes, Bhante, they go and they pay homage to Venerable Nandaka first, and then they go to Lord Buddha. And then they go and pay homage to Lord Buddha, and they say, relate to him what has happened. And Nandaka is there, Venerable Nandaka. Bhikkhunis, you may now go, for it is late. Yes, Lord, the Bhikkhunis replied as they paid homage to the Blessed One, and they left. When the Bhikkhunis had gone back to their quarters, the Blessed One addressed the Bhikkhus and said, Bhikkhus, on seeing the full moon on the 15th day of the month, You cannot find those who would doubt that it is complete. Looking at the full moon, no one's going to say it's not full. It's full. For it is already the full moon. In the same manner, bhikkhus, those Bhikkhunis are very moved and delighted in hearing the Dhamma from Nandaka, for their main purpose has now been fulfilled. Thus, bhikkhus, I declare that the least accomplished among these Bhikkhunis is a stream winner. The least accomplished. Never to be reborn into the miserable realms, bound for full liberation herself. This is what the Blessed One said, and those bhikkhus too were delighted and happy with what the Blessed One stated. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So a beautiful sutta, as you can see, and it's a demanding of us to be more focused and really absorb the sutta. Suttas are not things that we need to just read like a newspaper, as I was saying. They're there to change us. You know, even if you were to get a letter from a long, long, long lost friend, you know, and how would you read that letter? Do you read that letter like you're reading a headline of a magazine? Or do you take your time? You're like, you even fix yourself up and you sit and it's like, maybe get a cup of water. It's like, okay, this is special. This is special. So, and that's just a letter, maybe a romantic letter or from a loved one. Well, the suttas are the letters that Lord Buddha sent to us from 2,600 years ago. What do we do with it? Oftentimes I'm finding us showing disrespect towards the Dhamma. How? How? Especially if the person is going through the routines of rites and rituals. Rites and rituals are the first fetter, by the way, that needs to be dropped in my book. Even though it's Sakaya Ditti and Silabbata Paramasa, these are important fetters that need to be dropped. Many times I see people just going through the motions, bowing, this, that. I sometimes tell students, you don't have to bow to me unless you feel moved. Because you have to know, why am I bowing? Why? Is it because my parents taught me? Because he's a bhikkhu? Because, you know, whatever? Or because I'm moved? And if you approach it like that, you practice like that, you give your life more meaning and integrity. You cannot cut integrity and meaning out of the Dhamma. It's impossible for it to still be called a Dhamma. But that's what we have today in this world of mundane things, superficiality, mediocrity, things becoming bland. We're pushing the Dhamma into the same category. And that is, at least as far as we're concerned, no one's going to come and punish us. But we would be already wasting another life. Your life was not about just coming and going to school and finding a craft or a trade or something and making a living and finding yourself a mate maybe, having children, having a house or this and that, and then you grow old and maybe have grandkids or whatever, you have family. That's not the point. You've done that millions and millions and millions of times. So what's the big deal? One more life where you're a father or you're a mother or this or that or daughter. What has changed in you in this life? What has this life given you? What are you doing differently in this life? Are you going through the motions? Or are you really driven to make this life matter? Not matter in the sense of becoming successful in money. And you've done that millions of times too. Plus, you don't believe me? Look around you. You have countless people who are billionaires, unhappy billionaires. You have beautiful people. I used to be a therapist and I would see sometimes patients who would come, you would see all kinds of people. Some were exceedingly successful. Physicians, medical doctors, this, that, with so much money, not a dime that they owe to anyone. Healthy. Miserable, though. Miserable. I had to give them tools to be happy. I would see actors and models that are just like, other people would just drool looking at them. I was like, you're so pretty, you must be in heaven, you're like a goddess. And they would come and they would be miserable. They have what millions of people want, but they are in terrible suffering. Meanwhile, you have millions of people wanting to become like that, wanting to become rich, wanting to become a this or a that. Meanwhile, another life is wasted. Let's not waste another life. When you sit, even if it's half an hour, 1 hour, give it your all. Ask questions. Don't be afraid. Is this permanent or impermanent? Is this causing me suffering or not? Because if it is impermanent, I cannot rely on it. I cannot rely on it. So why am I making a big deal about this? Oh, I'm going to lose my job. Okay, fine. How did I get this job? Well, I worked, I have an education, I have experience. Okay. Yeah, but you don't understand. I worked 40 years for this job. Okay, but it's time for you to get another job. When you got this job, you didn't have the job, did you? Then you got this job. Now, another job is waiting for you to get. New world of opportunities, possibilities. There are other people who need you. You see how you can shift from a source of suffering, you can change it to a source of possibilities. So I will stop here because well, my throat is hurting a little bit, but I would like to see if you have any questions that I can try to answer. So even from Zoom audience, if you have any. Because today is the last day of the retreat here, so there's 2 more retreats coming up for 2 weekends. Not here, elsewhere though. If you're interested, you can participate at those. A deep sutta, yes. Yes. Hmm. And not just those. Yes, they are crucial parts because remember, he is also talking about feeling at one point. He was mentioning as a result of the 6 senses, spheres. Salayatana. Ayatana is a sphere or realm, or basically base, sometimes called. But essentially, it includes the eye, the visible form. But he also joins in this time, he goes a little bit into Paticcasamuppada, right? He says, eye consciousness, vijnana, chakku vijnana. Chakku means eye. So now he's talking, getting closer to something beyond just the mere 6 sense doors or the faculties, sometimes called indriya. Oh yes, the question was, so the essence of for someone asked, they didn't hear your question, whether the essence of the talk, the sutta was highlighting the 6 sense spheres and the satta bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening, and that is what I'm answering. So, so there were other elements, if you noticed, and he kept on talking about anicca, and he was also talking about dukkha. So you cannot look at any of these faculties or paticca samuppada factors without including in it dukkha, to understand the relevancy as to why. And you cannot talk about dukkha without also first taking into account that it is impermanent. Otherwise, a person can argue, like in Western philosophy, they've done it, to their demise. Because at the end of the Western side of philosophy, you just want to commit suicide because that's what it brought you to. Because they missed a whole chunk of the pie, if you will. Because you need to take into consideration the anicca part. That's when you start not to take things personally. I will not look at this cup as a cup anymore. A cup is a term that you and I have in the world calls this for convenience sake. But it is made of multiple molecules. When I say multiple, it's a lot. Plus, many things came together under specific conditions. And even now, it's under specific conditions. If we were floating in outer space, the cup will be in a different state. The water definitely will be floating out of it, and it will be floating. And if we go down below the ocean, every 50 meters, it's the atmospheric pressure, actually it's much less than that. The atmospheric pressure, the pressure of the water in this case, will crush this. Will crush this if you go too deep in the water. The pressure from all sides. So you see, there is this conditionality that most of us forget when we look at things, when we look at each other, when we look at our pain and suffering, our addictions and thinking and feelings. We say, this is who I am. This is it. Sorry, this is it. I have to go to therapy for 30, 40 years and pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get better. Because this is not changing. We don't give ourselves the possibility that we could change. So I hope that is that? Okay, there's a question here. Is the happiness the sort of dukkha? Because where we can feel happiness, we can feel dukkha too. What you're saying, yes, it's like the two sides of the same coin. Happiness and dukkha. So what I would like to use instead of happiness, I would use in this case to demonstrate what I'm trying to say in answering your question, Sophie, is pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain. Remember a stick or two, like, a string, basically, something like a string. One end is pleasure, one end is pain. In the middle, this whole chunk is neutral. Boring stuff. That's where we live. Most of the time, we have a life where things are not just pleasure. Things are not just pain. Most of the time, it's like, that's what Lord Buddha says, neither pleasure nor painful. I like to shorten that sentence and just say neutral. Now, the human brain does not like neutral. It likes spice. It likes to spice things up. Meaning, like a monkey, we like to go jumping from one branch to the next. One branch is the pleasure, the other one is pain. And we spend our whole lives like that. You always want to have pleasure. How many people have you met, and when you ask them, what do you want in life, they say, oh, I want suffering. I want a little bit more suffering and pain more. No. Everybody says, I want to be happy. I want to experience. What they mean is, I want to experience more pleasure. Why? What's wrong with this moment? Well, nothing's happening now. Lord Buddha says again and again how important this dull looking, numb looking, neutral looking moment is, because of that, you will attain arahantship. If you use the time, the middle portion of the string, as I said, which is the biggest part of your life. Why or how? Craving is the, as in the Majjhe Sutta we see, I covered that in the past. Majjhe Sutta is the seamstress, the middle sutta it's called, the seamstress. Seamstress is someone who stitches things, sews clothing. If you have a tear in your clothing, what do? You sew it up. We bhikkhus have to have, sewing needle and strings so we can mend our robes. But in the case of craving, that's the seamstress, comes and says, no, forget about this middle section. Life is all about taking you from pain to pleasure. Forget this middle path. No, forget. That's boring. No, neutrals are bad and unimportant. We always have to go seeking after pleasure. How many institutions make countless amounts of money based on that premise? Giving you pleasure. Oh, buy the new phone, buy the new car, buy this. Oh, look good, look young. Go get surgery, go get this. Oh, change your color of your hair. Why? To spice things up. At least to leave suffering behind. That's what I mean. So the question came as, please explain what we are to do with the neutral, if anything. Just observe it, how to make the neutral kusala. Well, your sati will make it kusala. What we do, however, is the opposite. We run away. We run away from the neutral because it's too bland. It's like you want to spice it up. Oh, can I get soy sauce and this and that and some ketchup and this? My father, when we used to have my sister would make noodle or something. He was diabetic. So he would get soy sauce, he would get ketchup, and he would start pouring them on there without tasting the food first. He's used to thinking that it's bland. It wasn't bland because we would eat without ketchup. Plus, ketchup has tons and tons of sugar. So he wanted to run away from the bland to something that is spicy. Yes, pleasure. So we are jumping from one branch, meaning call it pleasure. The other branch is painful. Pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure. Life has become that. Meanwhile, in reality, life is all about the neutral. Staying with the neutral is the doorway to Nibbana, thanks to being able to observe what is happening in the mind. Already, you're getting an idea, I hope. Because when you are not jumping around from one branch to the next, your mind becomes less and less agitated. You're not in a rush. You go to New York, you go to any busy country, you go to Tokyo. But there's that street, Upatissa, you know the name, I'm sure. There's like so many crosses, right? Shinjuku. So he's typing it. You look, and when I saw a clip of it in the 80s when I was a kid, I was like, wow, I can't even see that without my mind getting agitated. Shibuya, right? Shibuya. That's the name. Shibuya. One time it happened to me in New York. I was working there and I looked down. It was Avenue of the Stars, which is 6th Avenue. There's 5th Avenue, there's 6th Avenue. So it was the 11th floor glass. I used to work there as a designer. So I'm looking down and I see people like ants. Where are they going? Make more money, get better food, run away from suffering, run away from pain. That's what people do. And that's how we die, and we never complete. So long as you're either in the pleasure camp or in the painful camp, you're missing the boat. because you're always running after something. That's why we sit. That's why for so many people who come to meditation the first few times, there's like, it's too boring. So what, I'm not thinking about anything? At least can I visualize doing something? Can I visualize colors? And they come to interviews, they say, oh, Bhante, I saw this beautiful thing. I'm like, it's nothing. It's nimitta. They feel like so destroyed walking away from that interview. They're like, I thought I was going to get a cookie or something from Bhante because I saw this beautiful rainbow, this, that. No, come back. Already a lot is happening. A lot is happening. We are missing. That's why when I say, do you know which hand is over the other hand without looking? Can you know without looking which hand is above the other? I'm asking you. Yes. How did you know? You felt it. You became aware of it. But there was nothing pleasurable, no painful happening. What happened? Mindfulness happened. But the fun thing about mindfulness, when you train it within that neutral or bland area, it starts permeating and going, even seeping into the painful and pleasurable branches. It will become a lot more tolerable to stay in that painful state because sati is there with you, holding your hand, saying it's okay, this will pass. This is in anicca. And remember what the sutta said, anicca means dukkha. Okay, let's say. And poof, gone. So this is teaching you the correct wisdom. You're developing depth, and you're going deeper with understanding. Make sense? It needs application. This is not intellectual stuff. Yeah, you have to apply it. So maybe not being affected for something is helping being in neutral or... Well, that's the thing. When you are having sati, it makes you become not easily affected or to become influenced by those things, because you become affected when you take things personally. That's why you get affected, because you're jumping left and right, left and right, left and right. You don't want to be influenced or impacted by anything. What does that mean? You're protecting yourself. Oh, okay, let me just, like a tomato in, I don't know, around sharp objects, or a balloon around needles. You're like, oh, let me not pop, let me not blow. That's not healthy. You will pop if you're a balloon, if you're inflated. So you become more cognizant, okay, where's my fear coming from? So you are taking control of your life thanks to sati. Yesterday I was explaining how if you narrow down the Dhamma to one word, one principle, it is sati. Without sati, everything collapses. Even metta, if you're doing metta without sati, it's affection. It's not going to take you to Nibbana. Forget it. It's like any other religion claiming to be, like bhakti yoga or something like that. But with metta, Lord Buddha says, you will never enter another mother's womb again. You will not come back again if you do it right, fully. So